everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today our video is about how important has Pakistan's role been in international affairs since 1947. Let's talk about the early decision, East or West, the world after 1947. When Pakistan achieved its independence in 1947, international politics was dominated by what was later to be called the Cold War. This was an ideological struggle between the democratic capitalist bloc led by the United States and communist bloc led by the Soviet Union. The leaders of Pakistan recognized that they could not remain neutral in this dispute. Pakistan was a new nation and needed economic and political support to help it become established. As a viable independent country, Pakistan chose to ally itself with the United States. There were several reasons for this. 1. The United States was the most powerful country in the world with the most advanced economy. 2. Pakistan believed in a private economy like the USA and had traditional ties with the West. 3. Islamic ideology was anti-communist and the Soviet Union was a country which was considered anti-religion. One of the great communist philosophers, Karl Marx, had described religion as the opium of the masses. Yet, although the decision as to which of two superpowers, USA or USSR, Pakistan should support was important. The most pressing problem for Pakistan's leaders in 1947 and for many years to come was its relation with its neighbor and rival, India. Pakistan and India. During the struggle for independence from Britain, a feeling of hostility and antagonism had developed between the Muslim League and Congress. Pakistan had been created by dividing the old British India against the wishes of Congress, and there had been many deaths as a result of communal violence after partition was announced. It is true to say that from the first day that the new country came into being, Pakistan has felt threatened by its much larger neighbor. Therefore, relations with India have always been at the forefront of Pakistan's foreign policy. A quote by Rajendra Prasad, the first president of India, said that one thing is certain, partition is not likely to be attained with God will. And he hopes that after separation, things will settle down and the states will become friendly are built on sand. The chances are that distrust will make mutual accommodation even more difficult and make necessary the maintenance of protection forces on both sides. Partition in 1947 gave India and Pakistan a number of shared problems. These were the huge numbers of refugees wanting to move from one country to another, the sharing of what had been joint resources, and third, disagreement over possession of Kashmir. Now, let's discuss these three issues in detail. Number 1, refugees. Despite the large-scale population transfer in 1947, as Muslims from India moved to Pakistan and Hindus to India, there were still substantial religious minorities in each country. Feelings of hostility between the two religious communities were so high that there was a fear in both countries that the bloody scenes experienced in 1947 might continue. Consequently, in April 1950, Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan signed an agreement with Nehru of India. It was called the Minorities Pact, and two leaders agreed that each country would provide protection and religious freedom for the religious minorities. It was hoped that this would encourage the minorities to remain where they were and stop the tide of refugees. The agreement slowed the flow down, but it did not entirely stop people from leaving. They did not trust government promises or feel that it was possible for statements from the central government to change the feelings of hostility felt at local level. They also realized that even if protected, a minority group would not have the same opportunities and guarantees as the majority. Point 2. Resources. The issue of the handover of resources has been dealt with earlier, but it should be emphasized that the unsatisfactory manner in which resources were divided had a marked effect on relations between Pakistan and India. The reluctance of India to release assets made the Pakistani government even more suspicious of Indian motives and soured relations for the future. A good example of this concerned water, which was one of the vital resources that India and Pakistan shared. On 1st April 1948, India cut off water supplies from all the handworks that it controlled. Farmers in Pakistan had traditionally irrigated the land by canals running off the main rivers. As a result of this move by India, water in the rivers ran very low and made irrigation difficult. Pakistan's leader knew that such an act was undertaken simply to make it more difficult for the new country to prosper. Access to water was to remain a problem until 1959, when the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan guaranteed a 10-year water supply. Now, let's talk about Kashmir. Since partition, the issue of Kashmir has caused friction between India and Pakistan. Fighting between India and Pakistan in 1948 resulted in Kashmir being divided between the two countries. However, Pakistan was angered that India retained the largest area of Kashmir, including the capital Srinagar, and was determined to try to gain control of the whole of Kashmir. Most of the 4 million inhabitants of Kashmir were Muslims, and Pakistan believed the territory rightly belonged to her. From 1948, there was an agreed ceasefire line through Kashmir, which was controlled by troops from the UN. Negotiations continued throughout the 1950s, but little progress was made. In 1954 and 1955, India tried to integrate India-occupied Kashmir into India. This provoked protests from Pakistan and then from the UN, after Pakistan appealed to the United Nations Security Council. In 1957, the UN Security Council was so concerned that India might try to occupy Kashmir again that it issued a declaration reconfirming that the whole of Kashmir was a disputed territory and that its future could only be settled by a vote by the people of Kashmir. Such a plebiscite should be supervised by the UN. To date, no such vote has taken place and the area has remained a constant source of tension. The drift to war. The Kashmir issue remained unsolved and the lack of trust between the two countries affected their relations in other areas. India was particularly concerned about the military aid that USA was providing Pakistan. The Indians feared that Pakistan would use the aid against them, but the Americans assured them that support for Pakistan was part of the campaign against Soviet Union-sponsored communism. The sense of insecurity felt in India led to them signing a friendship pact with China in 1954. However, in 1962, India and China went to war over the positioning of the border between the two countries. China advanced to where it claimed the border should be before declaring a ceasefire. The Pakistan military noted the ease with which the Indians had been defeated and concluded that Kashmir could be reclaimed by war. The Indian reaction to the Chinese war was to begin a rearmament program accepting aid from the West. So by 1965, both countries thought that they could win any war over Kashmir. The 1965 war. The 1965 Pakistan forced the Indians to accept an independent tribunal to settle a border dispute over the Ran of Kutch on the Sindh-Rajasthan border. Since this was what Pakistan had hoped would also happen in the Kashmir dispute, it now decided to take steps to force India to agree to the setting up of an international body to decide on ownership of Kashmir. On 1st September 1965, Pakistan forces launched an attack against Indian forces in Kashmir. On 6 September, the Indians counter-attacked by crossing the border into Pakistan near Lahore. The United Nations intervened and persuaded both sides to stop fighting. In January 1966, the Soviet Union arranged a ceasefire conference in Tashkent. It was agreed that the question of Kashmir and all over disputes would, in future, be settled by negotiation. However, no settlement in Kashmir has been yet reached. The 1971 war. Endless war between Pakistan and India, although. The 1971 war. India's support for the Mukti Bahini in East Pakistan meant that Pakistan and India again went to war in 1971. There was heavy fighting along the borders of Kashmir and Punjab. Indian forces also entered East Pakistan, reaching Dhaka. However, the war lasted only 13 days and came to an end on 16 December 1971. A final statement, the Simla Accord, was signed in July 1972 and was a major step in improving relations between the two countries. The relations after 1971. Relations between India and Pakistan continued to be strained during the 1970s, but when Zia came to power in 1977, there was an improvement. He began receiving significant aid from the USA to oppose the Soviet Union policy in Afghanistan. Consequently, although the Kashmir issue remained important, Zia's main priority was supporting the Afghans. This enabled more peaceful relations between India than had been the case for many years. In the early 1980s, the Indians faced uprising by the Sikh community in the Punjab, who were demanding a separate homeland. India had accused Pakistan of providing arms and training for the Sikh insurgents, but was never able to substantiate these accusations. Then, in October 1984, Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated by Sikhs. Mrs. Gandhi's son, Rajiv, took over as Prime Minister. Openly accused Pakistan of having a role in the Sikh separatist movement and therefore indirectly in the assassination of his mother. Ill feeling rose despite Zia declaring a day of national mourning for Mrs. Gandhi in Pakistan. By 1987, relations had deteriorated to the point where the two countries were close to war. In late January, the Indian Army began exercises in the Rajasthan desert. These were designed to intimidate the Pakistanis. Then, in a brilliant political masterstroke, General Zia flew to India supposedly to watch a cricket match in Jaipur between India and Pakistan. While there, he met Indian leaders, including Rajiv Gandhi, and managed to cool the situation down. The exercise was called off. War had been avoided, but there were still many problems. The situation in Kashmir was far from resolved, and both sides continued to develop nuclear and conventional weapons in case of future warfare. Let's talk about a very important topic, Pakistan and nuclear power. Pakistan began focusing on nuclear weapons in January 1972, just 1 month after the loss of East Pakistan. In that year, it opened the Karachi Nuclear Power Plant, KANUPP. Pakistan was concerned about India's development of nuclear weapons and India's superiority in conventional forces. Prime Minister Zulfikar Bhutto felt strongly that the nuclear program was needed to ensure Pakistan's survival. This is one of the reasons why Pakistan did not sign in the 1970 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In 1974, India carried out nuclear tests which caused such concern in Pakistan that it stepped up its own development program by founding the engineering research laboratories in Kahuta, near Islamabad. It is believed that scientists in Pakistan had produced their own nuclear bomb by the beginning of 1985, but no official announcement was made until 1998. This was perhaps because the USA had said that it would not provide aid if Pakistan was developing nuclear weapons. Pakistan's relations with India further deteriorated. Both countries stepped up their nuclear development programs. In May 1998, India shocked the world by testing 5 nuclear devices. Just a few weeks later, Pakistan detonated its own nuclear devices in the Rasko Hills. In announcing tests, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif declared, "Today, we have settled the score." There was considerable concern in the world that the two great rivals now both had nuclear abilities. The UN Secretary General asked both India and Pakistan to sign the Comprehensive Test Treaty ban. India refused, so Pakistan did not sign either. However, in late 1998, both countries announced that they were stopping nuclear testing. Siachen Glacier. One area of Kashmir where there is constant conflict between Pakistan and India is around the Siachen Glacier, where the border has never been properly drawn. In 1981, Pakistan was concerned that India might try to take possession of the area and send troops in to prevent this. They were supposed to discover that there were already 300 Indian troops encamped in the mountains, so the Pakistan troops also dug in although the region is desolate and infertile. Such is its symbolic importance that both India and Pakistan have kept troops in the area and are believed to spend more than US$ 500 million each year in preventing an occupation by enemy forces. There has been regular fighting between the two sides, which has cost up to 5,000 soldier lives. About the last topic for today, the Kargil conflict. In 1999, Muslim Kashmiris guerrillas crossed into the Indian controlled area of Kashmir. India sent 2 fighter planes to attack them, but they were shot down after they crossed into Pakistan airspace. There was a major concern in the international community that 2 countries with nuclear capabilities might go to war, and there was some fighting. US President Bill Clinton finally intervened and both sides agreed to stop fighting. Once again, the Kashmir problem remained unsolved. Thank you so much if you have watched our video till the very end. For such amazing content, like and subscribe. We will be coming up with a part 2 for the relations of Pakistan and other countries after 1947. So make sure you have subscribed our channel, like the bell icon, and please do leave a comment so we know what you feel about our videos. Thank you. Goodbye.